G'day folks, my name is Attila and I'm the editor and producer of the 4xAdventures series of videos. G'day, my name's Artie. I'm an adventure travel filmmaker and I'm the star of the show. Well, you wouldn't have a show without me. Well, you wouldn't have a show without me. Okay, well, we make a pretty good team. We do. Artie's actually pretty keen to show you his truck, so I'm going to go man the cameras and hand it over to Artie. Thanks very much. Okay, so this is a 2015 Toyota FJ Cruiser. I bought it about 3.5 years ago. I bought it brand new. For the first year I didn't do anything to it, but then I slowly started modifying it, and over the past 2.5 years I've fairly extensively modified it. So the type of travel that I do is typically solo outback touring, or overlanding as it's also known. After a long day of driving, it was well and truly dark by the time I made it to camp. So, as I was building this vehicle, I had a couple of guiding principles in mind. Number one, everything had to be quick and efficient. Number two, I'm calling first order retrievability. And by that I mean you need to be able to get to everything without moving something else to get to it. Everything had to be reliable and strong, but also lightweight. Weight is the enemy, so I'll show you what I've done and how I've done it. I'm very, very happy with what I've got. So let's go around the car and I'll show you what I've done. Starting up the front, we've got the bull bar. I chose the ARB bull bar simply because I like the look of it. I had a look at various other brands and this is simply the one that I like the best. So underneath the car I've got bash plates going down, and they go about halfway down the length of the car. They protect vital components underneath. And on either side I've got recovery points. Properly rated recovery points are essential. You should never attempt to snatch or winch a car using the towing point. For the tyres, I've gone with the BF Goodrich TAKO2 all-terrain tyre. I've had these on for about close to 2 years, and they've served me really well. They're one of the best tyres you can get, and I'm extremely happy with them. The car has had a 2-inch lift, and I've also changed the shocks. I've gone with the Old Man Emu BP51 shocks. They have an external reservoir, and they're adjustable for compression and rebound using a C-spanner that came with the shocks. Okay, so for lighting I've gone with the ARB LED spotlights. I find them to be pretty good. Fog lights, which were also installed by ARB at the same time as they installed the bull bar. And on the top I've gone with an LED light bar. Now both the spotlights and the LED light bar are wired in so that they can only be turned on if your high beam is on, and that's the legal requirement in Australia. In addition, I tend to turn the LED light bar around to face inwards and disconnect the cable so that if you're pulled over on the road for having a light mounted up there, you don't get in trouble. I believe that should be okay. So for recovery I don't have a whole lot of things. I have a worn 9,500 pound winch. This has, that's where the winch comes out. It uses a synthetic cable which is a lot lighter than your traditional cable. It also has a Bluetooth remote, so I don't have to worry about plugging in a cable. I can just jump out of the car, use the remote to control the winch. Very, very convenient. I carry Max Tracks up on the roof. Those things are worth their weight in gold. I've used Max Tracks a bunch of times, and they're just so simple. You get out, stick it under the wheels, drive out. They are brilliant. I also carry some towing ropes, a bottle jack, and one of these things. This is an impact wrench, and this is really, really handy because rather than using a tyre lever or the crossbars to undo the wheel nuts, this thing does it in 2 seconds flat, so very, very handy. So let's talk about the roof. The FJ Cruiser is fairly small on the inside, so as a compromise I need to get rid of some of the gear from inside the car and put it up on the roof, only light things. So what I've done is I have a Rhino Rack backbone system, and that spreads the weight evenly along both edges of the roof, and on top of that I've got 3 heavy-duty crossbars. Sitting on top of that I've got an Alu-Cab Gen 3 rooftop tent and a Alu-Cab 270-degree shadow awning, and I'll talk about both those products shortly. So in terms of power, I have a 110 watt solar panel on the roof. It's made by Solar Hut, and it is a ridiculously good solar panel. It delivers approximately 6 amps solidly throughout most of the day. Early in the morning and late at night it still has very, very good capability of producing power, so I'm very, very happy with that. That is delivered into a Redarc 1240D DC to DC charger, and that in turn is connected to a 110 amp hour lead crystal battery. I've got the battery located in the back of the car. Now I do have space for the battery under the bonnet, but due to the high temperatures found under bonnets, typically 60, 70, 80 degrees, I chose to put the battery in the back. I've got a front runner battery box, and I've mounted circuit breakers in there and all sorts of things, so everything is nicely contained in this one little area of the car here. So obviously I do a lot of filming on the road, and I have a bunch of cameras, and I need to recharge those batteries all the time, and I carry a laptop as well. I have a 300 watt pure sine wave inverter, and that is connected to a whole bunch of camera battery chargers there, and a bunch of other 12 volt equipment. And that basically wraps up the power. One of the first things I did was install a cargo barrier. That's purely for the safety aspect. On an early trip we had bags packed to the very top of the ceiling, and I had reason to slam the brakes in an emergency a few times during that trip, and if the cargo barrier wouldn't have been there we would have been flattened. So cargo barrier, very useful, not only for that but also for bolting things too. So on either side of the cargo barrier I've got a whole bunch of things bolted to the cargo barrier, and so that's got some structural purpose as well. Drawers. I've had these drawers made by Drifter. They're custom made because I've got the cargo barrier. The distance between the back of the vehicle and where the cargo barrier is this much shorter than if the barrier weren't there. So they've custom made the drawers for me. I initially specified the height of the wheel arch going across so it's all flush, nice and level. There's 2 drawers, and the drawers, rather than having runners in the side, they would take up a lot more space and make the drawers even smaller. So these work on Teflon runners underneath, and they just slide in and out, very easy. I then custom made a set of drawers myself for some extra storage on top of the existing drawers. So that works really well for me. Of course, you can store things like clothes and a couple of light things up in the rooftop tent, and that is also a massive bonus because there's not that much space in the FJ, and whatever you can get out of the FJ up into the roof or into these drawers, that just gives you more space for either more stuff inside or another person or whatever the case may be. So So I like to make my life as simple as possible when on the road. In an earlier version of my setup, I used to have 2 tables. When I get to camp, I'd set up one table and then I'd go find my gas cooker, put it on the table, and then on the second table I was preparing food. And it was a bit of a hassle, and it's probably what a lot of people do. They carry either 1 or 2 tables, and you cook on one, you eat or prepare food on the other. It's a lot of weight and it's a lot of hassle, and then you have to pack everything away. So the way I've set up my cooking facilities is everything is built into the vehicle. So I've modified the drawers so that I've got a built-in gas stove, and that's bolted in permanently, and if I want to cook something, it's straight there. If I want to make some tea, I've got my cup, I've got my jet boil, which boils water in 1 minute flat, so it's really, really quick. Very useful if you want tea or coffee or 2-minute noodles or any kind of liquid boiled. This will do it really quickly. I can pull out this table as a work surface. Away I go. If I want to cook a meal, I've got this cooker here. In the other drawer I've got various utensils and tea, coffee, toiletries, things I need to get to on a regular basis. I've got a fridge slide, which I've never used as a fridge slide. I never intended to use this as a fridge slide, but when I ordered the drawers, I knew that having a mobile sliding work surface would come in very handy, and it is extremely handy because I can slide that out, I can put a cutting board on there and prepare my food and cook my food, and everything is just absolutely perfect. It just makes such a huge difference of having all these slide out work surfaces. I don't need to set up a table, I just slide it out, open the drawer, I can put my frying pan on there, here's my cutting board, everything I need is right there, so it makes a huge, huge difference the way that I've got this set up. It's just fantastic. One of the other things I've done is I've installed a water pump. So I've got a water tank in the car, which we'll get to soon. In the corner here I have a automatic water pump. So it's a pressure sensing water pump. As soon as I turn the tap on, it'll sense a drop in pressure on this side and it'll start pumping. As soon as I let go of the handle, the pressure will increase and it'll stop. I also have a 12-volt oven. This thing is fantastic. It goes up to 200 degrees Celsius. It has a 2-hour timer, so that's on. And when the timer runs out, it makes a satisfying ding sound. Inside, it's got 2 trays, and you can heat up meat pies or sausage rolls, cook a lamb roast, not a very big one, but certainly enough for a few people, roast vegetables. I make jacket potatoes in there, roast potatoes. It is really, really good, and it changes the whole game when you're cooking on the road. The best thing about this is you can have it running while you're driving. So what I normally do is I put a couple of jacket potatoes in foil, put it in the oven, set the timer, put it to 200 degrees and just drive. And in 2 hours time, when you're pulling up at camp, your dinner's ready. You know, it is really, really handy. On a previous trip I put some meat pies in there in the morning, and by lunchtime the pies were piping hot and they filled the entire cabin with this beautiful freshly cooked pastry smell. It was wonderful. Freshly baked, that's going to be delicious. Beautiful flaky pastry, piping hot meat, cold tomato sauce. What more can you want? This is going to be amazing. This is brilliant. So it runs off 12 volts, it draws 10 amps, but that's pretty small when you've got a secondary battery system, and 10 amps is nothing really. When you're driving, it's always being replenished by the alternator and the solar panel, so typically I get to camp after this has been running, I have a look at the usage on the battery, it's still at 100%, so it's absolutely fantastic. So you'll notice that I don't have a fridge in the back. A lot of people do put the fridge in the back of the vehicle, and that is great for accessibility, but it's not the best place to put it in terms of overall weight distribution. Ideally, you want to put all your weight between the two axles. So what I've done is I've mounted the fridge in the back seat here. I've actually removed one of the back seats. I've installed a platform and I've strapped the fridge down onto the platform, and that is rock solid, that's not going anywhere. And because the suicide door's in the FJ Cruiser, I've got accessibility to get into the fridge. It's out of the way, it's forward of the rear axle, lower than it would have been if I would have had the fridge in the back, and that's working really well for me. It's a perfect place to put it. I sacrifice one seat, but that's the least of my concerns. I generally am travelling solo or with one other person, so there's plenty of room for people in the car and luggage as well. So this works really well for me. I've also got a water tank. As luck would have it, I've got just the right amount of space between the fridge and the back seat to fit a water tank. This is only a 22-litre water tank. It's plumbed in permanently to the water outlet in the back of the car, and that will last me a week. That's very, very good. So, accommodation. You can have a ground tent, you can have the traditional flip-open rooftop tent, or you can have a clamshell rooftop tent. And this belongs in the last category. This is the Alu-Cab Gen 3 rooftop tent. It is built like a brick, it'll last forever, it is super comfortable, and it is really, really quick and convenient to set up. Let me show you how quick it is. All we do is open up these latches, the tent pops up. Inside we have two spring poles, and they go into here, and same on the other side, and that's it. So that is as simple as that to set up the tent. It took, what was that, 30 seconds? To pack away, just as simple. Put the poles inside the tent, close the lid, and drive off. The awning is an Alu-Cab 270-degree shadow awning. It doesn't need poles, it's an extremely strong awning, and the best thing about it is I can set it up in 1 minute with no assistance from anyone else. You just basically open it up. So I'll show you how quick that is. Unzip. There's 3 straps. Undo the straps and let the awning roll out. Make sure that doesn't catch. And we just go for a walk around the car. It's as simple as that. There's a pole you can throw up there, and that's it. I can set it up with one hand, just walking around the car, clip it in, done. It's brilliant. So a bit more about the tent. It comes with a 75mm mattress. It's pretty comfortable, but I have put another 70mm mattress topper on top of the mattress, so my mattress is basically 14.5 centimeters thick. I've got an electric blanket, I have an Arctic rated sleeping bag, got a couple of pillows and some clothes, and it is extremely comfortable. I couldn't be happier with it. The most important thing when you're traveling is to make sure that you get a good night's sleep, and this is extremely comfortable. It's more comfortable than my bed at home, really. I have a 12-volt fan that I've got in the tent as well. That is very useful when it gets hot. The tent has some lights inside it, some USB and cigarette lighter power up there as well, so I can plug in a laptop or charge my phone, or read a book, plug in a 12-volt fan, etc. So that all works really, really well. So for communications, I have a GME CB radio. I have the base unit mounted underneath the dash here, and that's out of the way. It doesn't take up any space in the cabin at all. I can control all the functions using the head unit here. Now I've got two antennas wired up. I've got a thinner whip style antenna mounted on the back of the car and a thicker style antenna mounted on the front of the car. I've got those wired to an antenna switch box that I built, and I can choose to use the front antenna or the back antenna at any point in time, depending on the terrain. One of the things I love about travelling to remote places is exactly that, the fact that you are so remote and so far away from other people. Often there's not another person for hundreds of kilometres, and it's something that I absolutely love the feeling of. It has a downside though. If you should need to call for help, what do? There's no mobile phone coverage, no CB radio coverage. If you have a situation where you've had an accident, you've had a snake bite or some life or death situation, it's important that you absolutely have a way of being able to call for help. This thing here is called an EPIRB. Now EPIRB stands for Emergency Position Indicating Radio Beacon. It's basically a little GPS transmitter with a built-in battery and a light. It's in a sealed case. It floats. The battery lasts for years and years and years. And if you happen to find yourself in a situation where you absolutely must call for help, you simply hit the button, it sends out a distress call along with your coordinates, and the satellites will then relay that signal and they'll send help. So I always carry this in the glove box. It's there all the time. If I go for a bushwalk, I put it in my backpack or my pocket. It's with me all the time, and it might just save your life. So if you don't have one of these, I highly recommend getting an EPIRB. I have a Safari Snorkel. This was fitted by ARB. The purpose of this is to let clean air in at this level. If you're following somebody on dirt tracks, there's a lot of dust, especially at ground level where the air would normally go into the engine. Up higher, much less dust, much cleaner air, much better for the engine. And of course, raised air intake means that you can do river crossings without water getting into your air filter. So, what is a diff breather, and do I need it? Rather than having a solid rod connecting your left and right wheels, each axle is split in the middle, and where those two halves meet, you have your differential. A differential is basically a spherical housing containing gears, and it allows the left wheel to spin at a different rate to the right wheel. When you're going around a corner, your inside wheel will spin slower and your outside wheel will spin faster because it has further to travel. So the gears inside the differential are working all the time and they heat up. This in turn heats the air up inside the casing, and as we know, when air heats up it expands, and that hot air needs somewhere to go. So rather than crack the housing from all that pressure, the housing contains a valve, and that allows some of that hot air to escape. So when you buy your vehicle from the factory, that valve has a short length of hose connected to it, and that's just cable tied up underneath the chassis somewhere. And this is perfectly fine for city driving and dirt tracks, but being adventurous four-wheel drivers, we will eventually do a river crossing. When cold water hits the differential, it causes the casing to cool down, which in turn causes the air inside it to cool down. That will cause cold air to be sucked in through that valve. Now, being underwater, it's going to suck in cold water, and we don't want cold water getting into your differentials. So to solve this, what we can do is replace that short bit of hose with a long bit of hose and have the other end mounted to a high point in the vehicle. So I have my diff breather mounted at the highest point I can in the engine bay, and I've got two tubes running down to each differential. This is above the maximum wading depth for my vehicle, which is about 1 metre, and that means I can do river crossings without fear of water getting into my differential. So do I need a diff breather? Absolutely, it's peace of mind. So under the bonnet I have a 4 litre V6 petrol engine. Now this has more than enough power for what I need, so I haven't tweaked that at all. What I have done though is I've installed an air compressor in the space down here. Now an air compressor is useful obviously for inflating your tyres, but I found the ARB air compressor to be just a little bit on the slow side. So I've installed a 4 litre air tank, which I've located in the cavity underneath the bull bar here. And I've run a line from that to the air socket I've got on the front of the bull bar. I've made that up myself. And the advantage of that is I don't have to open the bonnet and plug in a cable there, or go into the back of the car and get my air compressor out. I just walk around to the front of the car, plug in my air hose, inflate the tyres, unplug, and I'm gone. So all very convenient. So typically when you're on the road all day, you've gone over a million corrugations, everything's covered in dust, you arrive at your campsite, you're hot and you're sweaty and you're tired, and all you want is a nice warm shower. Well, I've got a shower and hot water system built into this car, and I will show you how it works. So what I've done is I've installed a heat exchanger. A heat exchanger heats cold water using the residual heat from your engine. The unit is plumbed into the hot water coming out of your engine, and I pass cold water in the other direction through the heat exchanger, and by the time the water gets to the other side of it, which is instant, it's hot. It's about 87 degrees Celsius. Now 87 degrees is far too hot for having a shower with, so I have a temper valve. Now a temper valve is a valve that has 2 inputs and 1 output and a temperature control on the top. So I've got my hot water input, 87 degrees, I've got my cold water input, and I have a mixed output, and I set the temperature that I want the output to be on the top, and that's a set and forget. You set it once and it's always going to be that temperature. And then I know that the water coming out of the mix output of the temper valve is the perfect temperature for having a shower with. And I've got that running to the other side of the car where I have my input and output points underneath the passenger door. So all I do is I plug in a hose that I've connected to my bucket or my onboard water tank. I plug in my hose with a shower hose on top, and as soon as I release the trigger, I get perfect temperature water for showering with. As soon as I let go of the trigger, it stops the water and I don't waste a single drop. It is absolutely perfect. So you've just been for a swim, you're wet, you want to get changed, you don't want to crawl up into the tent all wet, or you need to go to the toilet, or you want to have a shower and you just need some privacy. What do? Well, the perfect solution is this thing right here. This is the Quick Pitch Quick On Suite. It's basically a pop-up privacy room, and it works like this. Unzip the bag, undo the straps, unroll, and open it up. And this is a pop-up privacy room. You can zip up the side. It has a flap on the inside where you can then zip that down and reach into your car, get things. I've got my shower outlet point mounted just underneath the door here, so I simply plug in a shower hose and I can have my shower. It is absolutely brilliant. The other thing to note with the heat exchanger, even though I have a water tank and a 12 volt water pump in the back of the vehicle, that is purely for drinking and cooking. With the shower, because I may choose to use water from a river or from a well, I don't want to mix that water with my clean drinking water. So I've intentionally kept the plumbing separate for the shower and the drinking water. So I've got a 12 volt pump here, and I've got a water inlet on the side of the vehicle, and that goes through the heat exchanger and the pump and back out, and that is completely separate to my drinking water. I can, however, connect the two together using a hose and a one-way valve, and that way I can use the water tank for showering as well if the need arises. So that concludes my FJ Cruiser review. I'm very, very happy with where the car is at this point in time. I'll probably continue modifying it for many years to come, but as it stands right now, it is absolutely brilliant and makes life on the road a joy. And if you can't enjoy life on the road, then what's the point of going? So thank you for watching. I'd also like to quickly thank Ivan from Peak Off-Road for supplying the tent and the awning and for his invaluable advice over the years. So thanks for watching, folks. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll try and answer them all, and take care.